nutshell, one argument I like by philosopher Udine is basically he says if you want to compare two states of the world from a social perspective, if you say one is better than the other, then there has to be at least one person in the first who is better off in that state than in the other. To me, that's a very plausible requirement, and in fact, it implies Pareto indifference. And if on top of that you have independence of irrelevant alternatives formulated in terms of utility distributions, you already have welfarism. So I'm not going to go into any details in that regard. It's just what our approach is welfarist. That means all we need is information about people's well-being. And to be specific, we want to use information about their lifetime well-being. Because that way we can guarantee, if we introduce notions such as Pareto principles, what matters is really what matters to these people. We can set up this in a temporal framework, but at the end of the day, we want to leave it to individuals themselves, how they aggregate the experiences they have over their lives. So the lifetime well-being is really what the variable that matters. So let's call it UI. This will be just the real number, and this is the lifetime utility. Or I should say well-being. Well, I use the utility and well-being interchangeably of an individual. An important notion in population ethics is we have to think about, because people may or may not come into existence, what do we think, how do we describe, how do we model a life that's worth living? And the standard assumption is, or the standard convention in population ethics is, we assign a level of lifetime well-being to that level that just makes a life worth living. We call it neutrality, and basically what it means is the life taken as a whole is above neutrality if, from the viewpoint of the person leading it, it is better than a life without any experiences. You could also say, if you want, there are debates within philosophy, how do you exactly define neutrality? Some people say, well, neutrality is a life that's equivalent from the viewpoint of the person leading it to non-existence. I don't particularly like this formulation because I'd rather not involve states of non-existence. I don't want to assume that people make these comparisons. I mean, if there's nobody around, it's difficult to say who this person is that it applies to. So the way we phrase it typically is neutrality is a level of lifetime well-being that, from the viewpoint of a person leading it, is equivalent to a life without any experiences whatsoever. And we normalize, again, that is very common because it's convenient, we normalize it to a lifetime well-being level of 0. And y equals 0 represents neutrality. Now what we want to do is we want to make comparisons, social comparisons. Essentially we want to come up with a theory of the social good, that is capable of accommodating situations with different populations. So the domain of possible utility distributions we consider is not just, let's say, Rn, but it's the union of all possible finite integers. These are the population sizes of Rn, and an typical element of this will be the distribution of a number of individuals who is alive and their lifetime utilities. And the comparisons we have to make involve population sizes and an n, let's say, they don't have to be the same. Utility distribution involving n people, and utility distribution involving m people. The object we're interested in is a goodness relation. So R is a goodness relation. Defined with a set of possible utility distributions with possibly different numbers of people alive. And we will assume that these goodness relations, or the goodness relation that we're after, is quasi-ordering. That is, we allow for non-comparability, but we still want it to be transitive. So quasi-ordering is a relation that's transitive, but not necessarily complete. And the reason why we want to allow this possibility is, again, because variable population comparisons can be very complex, and you may want to say in some situations, well, I'd rather not make a commitment for one in favor of the other. Of course, you can always say, well, if you have non-comparability, replace it with indifference, but as we all know that or equal goodness, then we lose transitivity.
But you do assume transitivity.
Yes, yes. So we assume that these are quasi, orders. Transitive, but not necessarily complete. Well, the typical candidates are variable population extensions of utilitarianism. And basically, if you have same number comparisons that are utilitarian, you just look at total